I want to talk to you guys today about how to get better at making offers and really how to dumb it down so much so that it takes zero skill set whatsoever to get to an offer price. I created this offer calculator. People are starting to call it the Norton Method. It's a very unique way of getting to your offer number. And before I get into this, I really want to set the tone, or really the context, to why this is important. Because if you don't understand and grasp the concept around this, then it won't make a whole lot of sense to you, or won't make as much sense to you. But when you really grasp the offer process, then this will make so much sense. And you'll be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I was overthinking this so much. So if we think about wholesale real estate, we do some lead gen, we get in front of a seller, we're going to have to get an address, and we're going to have to do some sort of an analysis, and we're going to have to come to some sort of an offer, and ideally a buy price. And that buy price needs to be at a number that we can turn around and wholesale for a profit. That's our objective. The challenge that a lot of people have is you don't have a lot of time to do analysis. You're really thinking on the fly. And if you watch me do this live, or if you watch RJ Bates or some people that are really good at this, you'll see them pausing while they're talking or doing something else while they're talking. And what they're doing is they're doing their analysis, and they're coming up with their offer price on the fly while talking to somebody. And until that becomes second nature, that's kind of hard. You're doing two things at once. You're trying to engage in a conversation and get to a number. It can be very overwhelming. And analysis paralysis is probably the biggest thing that holds back investors and wholesalers and new wholesalers. And so how do we make the analysis process simplified? How do we make it fast and easy? The way to really get your head around this is you have to understand there's a difference between my offer price and my buy price. Now, we tend to think that they're one and the same. The number at which we sign a contract needs to be somewhat or fairly or pretty accurate. Wouldn't you agree? Like, I don't want to sign a contract with somebody unless I feel really certain about that number, which means I need to do due diligence, which means in wholesale real estate, I need to understand after repair value, and I need to understand condition or repairs. From those two things, I can back into a formula that will get me a buy price, assuming I can wholesale it for 15,000 or whatever number you want to wholesale it for. So to get to that contract price or buy price or max allowable offer, MAO, there's some sort of an analysis process that we think we need to do so that that number is fairly accurate. Okay, now that's true to a certain extent. The problem is initially we don't really need to be accurate, and we don't really need to have a number that we substantiate as an accurate number, because our first priority is to uncover motivation. There's only one real way to uncover motivation, in my opinion, and that is we have to put a number in front of that seller. That number needs to solicit a no. It's the go for no. It needs to be low enough that the seller says, there's no way I can pay that. So that way we can then come back with, okay, well, how close to that number can you get? And now we can start to uncover where the real number is, where the real motivation is. That's our priority. So if we understand that about the offer process, then my initial offer doesn't need to be accurate. It just needs to be low enough. And how low does it need to be? Ridiculously low, or so low that they say no. If they say yes to our low offer, then we didn't offer low enough because we didn't find the floor. So let me give a scenario here. Let's say that the after repair value on a property we're looking at is 200,000. If the after repair value is 200,000, let's just hypothetically say that the as is value is 150,000. Now you have to understand there's a difference between after repair value, ARV, and as is value, which is its current value, its current condition. Okay, current market value. So let's say that that would be 150,000. Well, we know that if the as is value, the market value is 150,000, if I'm going to wholesale that deal to a cash buyer, clearly I have to get it below the as is value, because I have to bring it to market or bring it to a cash buyer at a deal so that they have room to then buy the deal and do something and make money. Okay, so I know I have to be below the as is value. What number do I need to be at below the as is value so that if I take it to market, a buyer's going to want that deal? And then I need to be below that number. That's our exit number or our cash buyer number. I know I need to be below that number so that I can build in a wholesale fee. I'm kind of backing into some sort of a number that I can feel relatively confident about as my contract price, and then I need to be below that number with my initial anchor offer price. So let's think about this. There's ARV, that's retail, fixed up, highest price the market will pay. As is value is the current value the market will pay in its current condition. Then there's exit price, which is what an investor wants to pay. Then we have our wholesale fee, which builds in our profit. Then we have our offer price, which needs to be somewhat underneath where we want to land on the deal. So now the question is, all right, I'm on the phone, I'm talking to a seller. Where do I need to be on this property that we're looking at so that my initial offer is a low anchor offer, it solicits a no, so that I can then hopefully land at a number that I feel pretty good about, that if I get it at that number, I know I've got some room to make money. And then if the seller responds favorably, now I can maybe go into a further analysis. I can look at comps, I can look at repairs. I want to do my phase one analysis with no comping and no repairs. I don't care about ARV, and I most certainly don't care about condition, because I'm already assuming that it needs work or we wouldn't be talking. Those are some assumptions I'm going to make, and I want to get to a number that I can stick in front of a seller. And that is only when I'm really going to know if a seller's motivated. So guys, I just did live in front of 3,500 people, a live seller call. The seller initially came out and said, I'd like to get 500,000. I said, well, that sounds like the current value. To get that current value, here's what you would need to do. And I laid out for him, you would probably need to hire a real estate agent. You would need to go on market. You would need to clean up and clean it out, trash it out, fix up some things. It's going to take you some time. You're going to pay commissions. You're going to have inspections and appraisal contingencies. Are you willing to go through all of that to get that retail number as is value? Or are you looking for an investor who can come in and for the speed and convenience, give you a cash offer where you can sell it as is, not do any of that stuff, and walk away in 10 days or whenever you want? Is that what you're looking for? And he said, yeah, that's what I'm looking for. I said, okay, well, I would need to be somewhere in the high twos for that to work. Now, he came out at 500. Guess what his response was? He said, well, there's no way I can do high twos. And I said, okay, well, how close to that can you get? And he said, I need to be at about 350. Now, guys, I just set the bar low. He came back against himself, negotiated against himself, and said 350. What do I know now? I just found out that I'm dealing with a motivated seller. I said to him, okay, let's take a deeper look at this. I don't quite know if 350 is going to work, but let's talk about it. Let's take a look at it. I'm going to need to know a little bit more about what's going on with the condition. I'm going to need to take a look at some values and see if I get it at that number, if that makes sense. Now I can go into analysis. But let's say that he said to me, yeah, I'm not budging off of 500. Then my response would have been, okay, dude, you need a real estate agent and you need to go through all the brain damage to get that number. You can do it if you're willing to do all the things it takes, but that's what you need. I'm not your buyer. Or maybe I would offer creative finance because I do that too. But my point is I then know the solution is for that seller and it's not me, or it's not a low cash offer at least. See how I did that. Now I spent zero effort on that to get to that low anchor number, zero. In fact, I'm going to show you how I got to that number like that without even thinking about any of it. And that's going to be 95% of what we do is low anchor, a ballpark offer that solicits a no. That's going to uncover real motivation because they're going to respond to that either favorably or not favorably. And now I know, okay, we can dance now. Let's dig a little deeper. Let me get my head around this now. There is a point where you have to understand how to comp properties, how to establish value. And definitely there's a point where you have to build repair cost into the deal, but not yet. And in most cases, not at all. Leave a comment, guys, and let me know if you're following me right now, that this makes sense. There's a difference between offer price and contract price. My goal with every contract I sign is that my contract price is almost no. If no is right here, I want to be right here. I don't want no to be right here and my contract price is right here, or I left money on the table. My job is to get the very best deal I can. I owe that to myself. I owe that to my family. I owe that to my company and my employees and my salespeople. If I'm not getting the absolute best deal I can possibly get, then I'm cheating myself and everybody else. And likewise, when I dispo, if I'm not finding the highest paying buyer in the market, then I'm cheating myself and my team and my family. So I don't take the first price that a cash buyer gives me. I work it until I find what I believe is the highest paying buyer in the market. That's my job. Buy at the lowest price I possibly can and sell it at the highest price I can, which is the person willing to pay more than everybody else in the marketplace at that given time for that specific property. That's my job. And a wholesaler that does that makes a lot of money and does really well. The goal of making an offer is not to get a deal. That sounds counterintuitive for most people. The goal of making an offer is not to get a deal. That would be the byproduct. That would be a cherry on top. The goal of making an offer is to uncover motivation, because once we uncover motivation, we can decide where to go from there if it makes sense to keep talking and work through analysis. But I have to uncover motivation through the offer process. So the goal is not to get the deal. The goal is to uncover motivation. When you grasp that concept, it changes everything about this business. You show up totally different. You're not hung up on analysis anymore. You're not stuck comping for a half an hour or an hour. You're not asking how old is the roof. I never ask those questions until way later on. Then maybe I ask those questions. Okay. Yes. Thank you, Ross. The goal of making an offer is to uncover motivation. That's why we make the offer. That's it. And it's no different on market, off market. It doesn't matter, because that's the only time when you're going to uncover the motivation. And like I said, guys, this works on market. I buy a lot of deals through agents. We have a contract right now in Fort Myers, Florida, and list price is $180,000. We have the contract right now for $88,000. The same thing happens off market. The seller, if he's got any brains whatsoever, is going to lead out, typically, not always, but typically they're going to lead out with Zillow or the as-is value. Why wouldn't I? I would. If someone said to me, hey, how much do you want for the property? I would give them the Zillow number. Why would I leave money on the table? What if they're willing to pay full as-is value? So you have to expect that. You have to know that 9 out of 10 times, a seller is going to give you the Zillow number or the as-is number. Why wouldn't they? That's the smartest thing they could do. They're playing the same game you are if they got any brains. Price is a deceiver. It's not really an indicator of motivation most of the time. Now, sometimes they lead out and they're like 75 and you're like, holy crap, that's a smoking deal. Okay. You guys see that sometimes, but that's the exception. That's not the rule. The rule is sellers lead out with as-is value. If you guys watch me, you'll see me do this. When I do my calls, you'll see me do this. The biggest rule you can learn if you want to close like I do or learn from me: never discriminate a seller based on list or ask price. Never discriminate, meaning don't judge motivation by ask or list price, because it's not always an indication of where the seller's really at, meaning what their real bottom line is. You got to dig that out. You got to uncover that. You got to work to that number. What is their real number that they're willing to take on this deal to get this done? And then, of course, you got to convey trust and confidence, and they're going to go with you only if they feel like you can get to the finish line. Otherwise, they're going to go with the next wholesaler that does a better job building trust and confidence. Having said all of that, I kind of wanted to lay the groundwork here. Let me show you a fast, easy way to do this. Let me show you this tool here and walk you through this. This is how brain dead easy this is. So follow me along right here. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go and extract the Zillow number, the Realtor.com number, and the Redfin number. Now, why all these numbers? What we've come to understand here is that these big companies, Zillow, Realtor.com, and Redfin, they've invested millions into their algorithm. It used to be sort of like a joke. People would say Zillow, and it was like way off, and it was kind of funny. Now, Zillow is very accurate about the current value. And in fact, they put out a report that shows how accurate they are. And they're within 5%, sometimes, and 10%. They're very accurate now at predicting value. Realtor.com actually gives you 3 numbers. We take the average of the 3. Now, if you're super rural, then they don't have enough data and it won't give you one. That's an indicator to you right there that you're rural and you're going to have a hard time on that deal anyway. So if it doesn't have the Zillow number or the Realtor number or the Redfin number, you should be sort of concerned. But typically in a metro market, we can get these numbers. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go on Zillow. We're going to get their Zillow number, Realtor number, and Redfin number, and we're going to add those into this tool right here. Then it's going to take an average of those 3. Now, you could skip all of them and just use Zillow, and you'll probably be okay. But I like to get as much data as I can, so I get all 3. It automatically, these green cells are formulas. So it automatically is going to average these 3 numbers. It's going to come up with 147. Now, that's my current market value or as-is value. Now, I want to exit this deal at 60%. Why 60%? Because my experience is that cash buyers will pay 60% of the as-is value. Now I want you to pay attention right here. I've got a scale here because that 60% varies based on price point. So if you look right here, if the property's value, the as-is value, is under 150,000, then buyers typically want to buy, or your exit price is going to be at 60% of that as-is value. That gives them plenty of room to do their thing. Now, if it's between 150 and 200, they want to be at 65, 200 to 370, 300 to 475, 400 to 580. And I would stick at 80 if you go over 500,000. There's a scale here of exit percentage of as-is value. Of course, that's the exit number. Remember, we got steps. We got to step this thing all the way down. So then I like to make more profit the higher the price point. I hope you guys do too. So basically my goal is if I'm dealing with something that's under 200,000 in as-is value, I'm going for a 20K wholesale fee. If it goes between 200 and 300, I want to make 25 on that deal. 300 to 400, I want to make 35, and 400 to 500, I want to make 45, and so on. So the higher the price point, the higher percentage of exit and the higher percentage or the higher profit I want to make. Now, this is all built in based on this scale. So if you change this, it will update these formulas because maybe you operate differently. But I think this is a really safe way to operate your business. So let's follow the math here. The average of these three things is 147, 60% of that because it falls under the 60% exit, puts me at 88,000, less my wholesale fee because I want to make 20,000 under 150. There's my wholesale fee, which means I need to buy this at 68.5, which happens to be 46% of value, of as-is value. Now, guys, remember, we're not talking ARV, so throw that out the window. Don't think about ARV. You got to change your mindset around this. We're only going off of percentages of as-is based on data we gathered from the three big giants. So now I want to get this deal at 68, so I might offer 60 or 55 as my anchor and then land at 68. So guys, while you're on the phone, no comping, no estimating repairs. All you're doing is gathering three pieces of information. Zillow, Redfin, Realtor, pop that in your spreadsheet, gives you your number, and you're off to the races. Let me know if you think that's cool. Leave a comment, say, Jerry, that's a really cool tool. You're a flipping genius. I want to really make this process easier for people because the biggest thing that I see people struggling with is analysis. I would say analysis has got to be the showstopper for most people because if you're bogged down in analysis, you can't talk to as many people, you can't make as many offers, and you just can't move the needle enough in the business to get deals.